Talking Reef podcast. This week we're going to do a video for you. It's going to be a quick video, and what this one's going to be about is a couple weeks ago I was getting prepped to restart some of my phytoplankton cultures. This is a normal occurrence. Anybody that's done phyto for a long time knows it. While sometimes it's said that it lasts forever, it really doesn't. Every once in a while you do have to go through and restart your cultures. So that's what I'm doing now, and I realized that when I did the phytoplankton video, I did not actually go through how to start the cultures. So that's what I'm going to be doing this week is kind of going through and explaining to you how to start the cultures, what's involved in making the culture medium, and how to get everything set up and going. So that being said, let's kind of move on and we'll get going on it. Okay, let's get ready to start our phytocultures. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a rundown with a list of supplies that you're going to need to actually get your culture started and going. The first thing, we have our container to hold our culture media. This is the water that's going to contain the fertilizer for the microalgae, and it's going to be used to top off the cultures after you split them. Along with that, we're going to be using some regular salt. I've got instant ocean, just plain instant ocean salt. And we're also going to be using these containers. Now these are Rubbermaid containers. I believe they are 2-quart containers, and they come with a little lid, and we'll see that in a little bit. We're also going to use airlines, hard airline tubing, the flexible airline tubing, and a standard pump. Many of you will remember this from the Talking Reef podcast that explained how to culture phytoplankton. And in that episode I go into a lot more detail about all the various pieces of equipment that are required. So if you need that information, make sure you head over to talkingreef.com and look for the episode on culturing phytoplankton. To continue on here, the next thing that we're going to use is our culture. This is our starter culture. Now this is a culture that is done by Algagen. This is regular plain nano. There's some other types, but this is kind of the common one that people usually start with. And then this is the nutrients that the fertilizer that's going to go into the culture medium. This is also from Algagen. So that's pretty much the start. So at this point what we're going to do is get ready by prepping our culture medium. And to do that, I've got this filled up with halfway, so I got about a gallon of water because this is a 2-gallon container. So the next step in here for me is I'm going to add my salt. Now the directions on the instant ocean salt call for a ½ cup per gallon, and that's going to mix you up to a specific gravity of 1.023 to 1.024. Now I have found that when doing phytoplankton, culturing at about 1.019 is the best to do it. So I've actually got a little less than 2 cups in here, and that should be good. Just when you're mixing it up, just take it slow, figure out how much of your brand of salt is needed, and continue on with that amount. You want, again, about 1.019. So we're going to go ahead and add the salt in there. And that's the salt, and I guess that's enough salt for 2 gallons. We'll top this off in a minute. The next thing we're going to use is this is the phytoplankton culture nutrient materials. And this stuff is used pretty common with the rest of the stuff that's out there. It does come with a little dropper that's marked out, has milliliter points marked out on it. And you're going to use about 1 milliliter per quart of water. So in this case, 4 quarts in a gallon, 2 gallons total, 8 quarts, so we're going to have about 8 milliliters. Now the nice thing is that if you have a 1 teaspoon cup, 1 teaspoon is equal to about 4 milliliters. So if you have this available, you may not need to use this. What we're going to do is use 1 teaspoon of the culture medium, twice because we have 2 gallons. One and 2. So now there's the 2 milliliters, or the 2 teaspoons in there that we need for our 2 gallons of water. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to top this off using just everything in here is just regular RODI water. You want to make sure you use good clean water for that. Okay, now it's all topped off, and at this point it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to cap it off, mix it up real good, and then after it's mixed up it's going to be pretty much ready to use. So that's our culture medium. The next thing we're going to move on to is actually starting the cultures. Now here we are with our container. Now this is the 2-quart Rubbermaid container. Again, this is what I use. Some people use 2-liter bottles. I found this works a lot better. They're easier to clean out. They've got a nice wide mouth. You can get your hand in there and get it cleaned out. If you do clean them out, I do recommend just using a regular sponge or cloth. You want to kind of stay away from the Brillo pad stuff, because what will happen over time is you'll get stuff built up inside of here, and a regular sponge might not easily take it off, so a lot of people are tempted to go in there and scrape it all off. What happens is it puts a lot of scratches on the inside of the plastic container, causing even more of that stuff to collect and attach to the side. So keeping it clean is good after each use, wiping it out, and not using something real abrasive will help keep these jars lasting a while. Eventually they will need to be replaced, but I found that one of these jars will last 8 to 10 months before it needs to be replaced, sometimes a little bit longer depending on the condition of it. So that's what we're going to start off with. This is regular culture medium right out of the stuff that we make, and now we're going to use the culture Phyto starter culture. You want to make sure that that's shaken up real good to make sure any settling that has occurred during shipment or while storage before you used it. We're going to open the top. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pour this into the culture medium, and we're going to pour in just enough to tint the water green. Hopefully this comes through. Let's see how that works. That came up pretty good. So we got nice green tint water. That's really all we're going to need to do. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a couple more, and then I'm going to show you connecting them all up and getting them. Okay, so I've went ahead and topped off both my bottles. So we've got our 2 bottles. The next thing we're going to do is like I mentioned, you're going to use a rigid airline tubing. This is the hard stuff, but I think it's 3/8 inch diameter. And you're going to cut it off so it's a little bit taller than the bottle. You're going to have holes drilled in the top of the caps there, just large enough for this to go in, and then that drops in. That's how that works. I'll put that one backwards. And then at this point, that's pretty much it. You're going to set these up with the airline tubes and the airline pumps to get a bubble going through there. Again, for details on that, check out the Talking Reef podcast on phytoplankton culturing, and it'll basically take it from here through the rest of the process. It'll take you through hooking these up, a little bit more about the materials, the pumps, and everything involved, and it'll also take you into exactly how to split these cultures and come out and use them and store them and so on and so forth. So that about wraps it up. The one thing that I didn't mention on here, as you can see, I've got some dates on these bottles. The best thing to do, once you start your culture or you split your culture, you write today's date on it. Now these cultures will take anywhere from 6 to 10 days once you first start them to get to a point where you want to split them. Once they get going, it could be anywhere from 4 to 7 days that they'll need to be split, and it depends on your environment and the temperature and stuff like that where you're culturing them. But you want to kind of keep the dates on them so you can keep an eye on how long they're in there. Not so much, you know, some of it is because you want to say, okay, it's been 6 days, it's time to split. That's part of the reason. But if you're doing multiple cultures and you've got, say, you know, like me, I culture 6 to 8 bottles of these at a time. But it's important for me in that circumstance so I can see, okay, those two were done last, so I don't want to touch those, and I want to look for the oldest dated bottle, and those are the ones that I want to change out. So those are some of the things that you might want to do. Again, check out the episode on culturing phytoplankton, and it'll take you from this point on throughout the rest of the process all the way to the end. And you can also check out the podcast episode on rotifers, where I'll take you through the following steps on how to use phytoplankton in culturing your rotifers. So that's going to wrap up this demonstration for you. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you. And again, I just wanted to take a minute and thank you for joining us. I know this is kind of a simple or kind of a newbie type show, something that I'm sure a lot of you that have watched the other episode have figured out already, but it's something that I wanted to make sure that got out there, because with the other episodes about culturing phytoplankton, there's been a lot of questions about starting it, and especially when looking at the various different products. How do I use these starter kits? How do I get the phytoplankton started? So on and so forth. So I thought it was important that I get this one put together and get it out onto the site and onto the podcast feed for everybody. Now, a couple other things that I wanted to talk about are some stuff that's coming up on the site. Again, we have our photo contest, with our Tank of the Month contest, which has been going on and is continuing to go on. Make sure you check out the website for all the details on that. And next week I'm going to have a lot of good stuff in the show, some questions and stuff from the website from people, and some other discussion points. So that's going to wrap up the show for this week. Make sure you head over to talkingreef.com and check out the forums, and I will talk to you all later. Thanks. That's going to wrap up the show.